This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohn and Shane Dale, and let me tell you something. What a world. It's December 8th as we're recording this. The Arizona men's basketball team is number 1. The Arizona football team is number 17 and going to the Holiday Bowl. Shane, you would have never expected that in 4 months ago, would you?
Yeah, you can call me weird for this, but sometimes every so often there's like a TV show that I like that I'll rewatch, or a movie I'll rewatch, and I don't really like the ending, so I'll just stop a little early, or even with the song, I'm not crazy about the last minute or something like that. I wish I could do that here. I wish I could just bottle this where we're at right now, and bottle it, and then whenever we're having a downtime, just kind of spray it and all around and make it all go. It is remarkable. It's just, I've said before, savor the good times, but they keep getting better and better, which I enjoy it. Also makes me a little nervous, but look, number 1 in men's hoops, number 17 in football. A year ago, a couple of months ago, would not have imagined that, considering the state of the football program and the gauntlet of a schedule that the men's basketball team had. It is remarkable, and I'm almost out of words describing just how fantastic it is. But it is Arizona, the University of Arizona Athletics, and if you're just talking football and men's basketball, there are very few programs in the country, if any, that have had a more successful combo over the last month or so than those two programs.
Well, it's funny because, 2 years ago we said, all right, savor it. We'll probably never see this again. The Wildcats were a number 1 seed in the West. The football team went 10-3 with an Alamo Bowl win. Okay, so you don't necessarily have the prestige of Oklahoma in your bowl game, but listen, SMU was in the college football playoff last year and brought back largely the same team. And oh, by the way, had they beaten Cal in their final game, they're in the ACC championship game,
right? And
very well could have beaten Virginia, as we saw with Virginia, crapping the bed.
Well, the
last
ACC
week against Duke.
Just being
and so SMU very well could have been playing in the college football playoff, had they not slipped up. And now, they're playing Arizona in the last bowl game of the year outside of the college football semifinals and championship. It's pretty impressive.
And that's another great thing too, is that it is not a CFP game, but it is kind of like the Alamo Bowl, one of the more highly regarded non-CFP games. And it's at a time where, it's sort of a really good appetizer for the rest of the college football playoff. It's not going to be buried in the middle of the conference schedule, or the bowl schedule, I should say. So it's a really good opportunity on another national stage, primetime TV, to make another statement.
So the other thing, and then we'll get to buy or sell here, is the extra practice time. And I really think that's a big deal. You're bringing in, you can bring in this class that just signed, 12 or 13 guys are going to come in there and get extra practice time. That definitely helps to get those reps in early. It's a huge advantage. And I think, especially Arizona has a tricky schedule next season. It definitely can't hurt. So I love to see it, and very excited for this Holiday Bowl. But let's get to buy or sell, which is presented by our friends at Iceshaker, which is owned by former Arizona football player Chris Gronkowski. And Shane, tell us a little bit more about Iceshaker.
Oh, Iceshaker was founded by, like you said, Chris Gronkowski, who started his own business, went on Shark Tank, got a great deal from Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez, and then I think A-Rod sold his share to Rob Gronkowski, who you also might have heard of. Doing great things with these. They've sent us several of these bottles, which are fantastic. This is the 40-ounce Legacy Series I'm holding up here, which is awesome. Keeps your drinks cold, keeps your drinks hot. I know you've taken them on the golf course, Eric, and they really do keep your drinks cold in the summer heat. Not worried about that so much this time of year, but they're awesome. Check them out at iceshaker.com.
All right, let's get to it. By the way, first of all, coming up on the show, our buddy Matt Muehlebach going to join us. Mr. Triple Double, going to talk some Arizona basketball in segment number 2. But let's talk a little basketball in segment number 1. And number 1 in buy or sell, Shane, as of today, via the eye test only. Eye test. I don't want resume. Yeah. Eye test. There's no better team in the country than the Arizona Wildcats. Buy or sell.
It's tough for me just because I'm not going to pretend like I've seen enough college basketball to really know. I mean, if you just look at the eye test, if you just look at the Auburn game, tell me a team that dominated more over 40 minutes than Arizona did against Auburn. Certainly Michigan's had some of those games, and maybe Iowa State over Purdue over the weekend. But you know, if you just look at the numbers, you'd probably have to give Michigan the nod because they're number one in net, number one in Ken Palm, and they've blown out some very good teams. Surprisingly, just like how easily they beat some outstanding teams. But I will say, what I will buy is this is probably the best team that Tommy Lloyd has had to date at Arizona, and that's saying something because every year he's had a very good team. Two one or a 1 seed, a couple 2 seeds, and a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think the win over Auburn was easily their most complete of the season. It wasn't the most impressive in terms of opponent, but they blew out a very good team on Saturday night. In years past, this kind of game would have been a game that Arizona probably would have won, but not in dominating fashion, right? It would have been close throughout. But this game was over at the first media timeout of the second half.
Yeah.
Auburn had a 5-point lead early, and then that was it. Arizona went on a big run, another big run to start the second half. This was Arizona's biggest margin of victory over a ranked opponent in 23 years.
Unbelievable.
You add that to the resume that they've already built. And I like what Stephen Pearl said after the game. He said the freshmen played like juniors and seniors, and they're built like more like football players than basketball players. And I think that's the biggest difference between this team and previous teams under Tommy Lloyd, not just size, but physicality. They have guys who can just legitimately push some of the top players in the country around a little bit. They're built like NBA guys. There's not a weakness on this team except maybe some inconsistent 3-point shooting, but I'm not concerned about that at the moment. So hard for me to buy that Arizona is definitely the best team in the country simply because I got a day job. I haven't seen enough of the other contenders, but I think at even this early in the season, it's safe to say this is Tommy Lloyd's best team in Tucson.
So I'm going to sell this one as well. I can't tell you that they're the best team in terms of the eye test. Michigan's look great. I still think UConn is really, really good. When they get healthy, that's a team that I would watch out for. I'll tell you, Iowa State looked great at Purdue. Purdue's still really good. I'm not willing to say that. Now, Arizona's resume as of today is the best. You have what, 4 ranked wins or four quality wins in Florida, UCLA, UConn at UConn, and then Auburn at home. And beating Auburn in the way you said, Shane, it was not even a contest past the 10-minute mark. We thought it would be a close game for 30 minutes and then, Arizona would pull away. It was the opposite. It was a close game for 10 minutes and then Arizona pulled. I mean, it was wild. So I'm really impressed, but I'm not ready to tell you that they are by far the best team in the country.
Yeah.
I am a little concerned that they're peaking early. I don't want to come off negative, but I mean this is a really good team.
Yeah.
But we also saw. I want to point this out. What was it the other year, Shane? ASU was number 3 in the country. And we thought, okay, they're really good, and then they in the Pac-12 they were the rest of the season. I don't think Arizona's going to do that, but.
No.
But
But
they peak two,
a couple thoughts on that. And number one, again, like I said, I've had those concerns too. It's like it's great, but it's also kind of frustrating to see this kind of domination in November and December, knowing that that March is still a few months away. But again, this team is so young that I still think there's room to improve, especially with guys who are not only young but haven't played in a long time, like Mo Krivas and Dwayne Aristode, who should only get better as the season's gone along. And Krivas looked great against Auburn. Aristode, Tommy Lloyd said Aristode he thought had his best game of the season against Auburn. So that I think that's the key thing is that there's still a lot of room for improvement. And again, as going back to the Auburn game, in the past, this is the kind of game that probably would have gone back and forth, and the McHale Center crowd helps will Arizona to a win. McHale Center crowd was great. They didn't have to do anything in this game. They didn't have to will Arizona to a win. I'm sure it helped. Don't get me wrong, but I'm sure the fans were gathered expecting that have to be at full throat for 40 minutes to help Arizona win this game. They didn't have to do that. Arizona took care of it on its own, and that's a difference between this year and what we've seen in previous years.
So impressive. Number 2, Shane. If Arizona were to run the table, so they go and they beat Alabama this weekend, San Diego State next Saturday, they go 13-0 in the non-conference. A top 2 seed in the West region is all but guaranteed, barring a disastrous conference season, which would be fairly improbable at that point. barring injury.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what you consider a disaster. I mean, there's always things that can happen, including injuries, and there are a lot of other good teams out there, including just in the Big 12 itself. I feel like there are, along with Arizona, four legitimate Final Four teams. And Kansas may work its way up there at some point. And then that doesn't even consider Michigan and Duke and UConn, which is going to get healthy and be very good. And already is. Purdue's probably going to right the ship. So I feel like this is maybe like the most top loaded we've seen college basketball in a while. Like in previous years, I think Arizona would have received all the first place votes at this point, or almost all of them, but they got a little over 50% this time, which is still good. But it just shows you, even with their resume, how many good teams there are out there. So there's a lot of things that can happen. And I think there's going to be a lot more contention for those 1 and 2 seeds than there were previously. So at this moment, they're absolutely a 1 seed, but we still have 3/4 of the season to go. So I think it's a little too early to say that. I think, if they get to that tough stretch at the end of their Big 12 schedule, and it looks kind of like last year where they started like 10-1 in the Big 12 or something like that, 9-1. Then I think it's probably safe to say, okay, if they split the rest of their games, they're probably safely in the top 8 or even the top 4. But I'm not quite there yet.
I'm buying it. If you go 13-0 with this kind of a non-conference resume, go 13-7 in the Big 12. I think you have to be.
They have 18 conference games this year, isn't it? Instead of 20.
Sorry, yeah, you're right.
So like 12-6, something like that.
12-6, 11, even 11-7. I mean, you go, 24-7, probably with the wins that Arizona has, that RPI, depending on who the losses are against and whatnot, probably at least a top 2 seed. No,
the only thing I'm a little surprised about is that they're not actually higher in net and in Ken Palm. They're number 5 in Ken Palm. They're number 6 in net. You'd think they'd be a little higher in both. It's still good. Don't get me wrong. And they're top 10 in both offense and defense in Ken Palm. But I think that just shows again how much competition there's going to be, more so than usual for some of those top seeds this year.
But see, here's the thing: you go on the road, you beat Alabama this weekend. That is, you're jumping up, significantly. You're going to jump Vanderbilt. You're probably going to jump Gonzaga. It's Michigan, Duke, Iowa State would be, is still undefeated. Who knows how they'll be? But I think Arizona has a really good shot to move up, if they were to get that win. Now, it's once again a hypothetical here.
Yeah, I think the other thing is recency bias. It does factor in. I think we've seen it in football. I think Arizona football, for example, would not be as highly ranked as 17 if they had gone 9-3 in a different order with the same kind of resume. So
right, that's true.
There's
right.
some of that as well. And those wins will still be valued for sure. But I think, if they were to kind of, go into the NCAA tournament with like maybe 6 wins in their last 10, that could be something that costs them a seed line.
That's fair. Okay. All right. Number 3, we'll talk a little bit more basketball later in the show. But number 3, Shane, Arizona's bowl game against SMU is a top 3 bowl game in terms of significance to the program since 2000, albeit they didn't make a bowl game until 2008 in the Vegas Bowl, which was quite a memory. Top 3 bowl game in terms of precedence for Arizona, buy or sell?
Since 2000, yeah, I'll buy that because there haven't been that many prominent games to choose from. I think, but their 3 most prominent overall, I would say, were both of the Fiesta Bowls and the '98 Holiday Bowl, but 2 of those 3 took place before the year 2000. So yeah, for sure. I think being able to say that this program has 10 wins in 3 seasons would be even more significant than that in terms of improving the image of a program that certainly doesn't have anywhere close to the pedigree that the men's basketball team has. Because what happened every year after each of those bowls that I mentioned, the Fiesta Bowls and the Holiday Bowl in '98, they are underperformed the following year relative to expectations. And to be able to say that this program won 10 games 2 years apart, not just won 10 games in 3 seasons, but won it with 2 different coaches, with a coaching change in the middle, it should reinforce the idea that you can win at Arizona. Not quite what Kurt Cignetti has done at Indiana,
no,
but a statement nonetheless. So I think that in terms of just being like 10's a pretty number. It's a prettier number than 9. And to be able to say you got double-digit wins 2 out of 3 seasons, I think would be as good a selling point to recruits as anything.
I'm actually going to sell this one. Since 2008, I think the Fiesta Bowl in 2014, just being a New Year's Six game was
Sure.
important. I would say the 2008 and '09 games, the Vegas Bowl after a 10-year drought of making a bowl game, coming back after that, and it was a standalone game on ESPN. I think that was a
Yeah.
really big one. And then the Holiday Bowl against Nebraska, a big opponent that had just gotten left out of the BCS
I don't want to talk
at
about that
that
game.
point. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to talk about the last Holiday Bowl that they were in clearly, but yeah, that's where I'm saying that those three are bigger. I'd put this one number 4. I would
Okay.
actually put this ahead of the Alamo Bowl in 2010. Arizona was not going well at that point, and got smoked by Oklahoma State. I think they were on a downward trajectory. I also think that the Alamo Bowl the other year was bigger, so I actually would rank this game. Yeah, I'd rank this actually fifth.
Yeah, that's fair. If you're just talking about like bowl games and the significance of bowl games, I think that's fair. But again, I think in terms of being able to reach that magic number of 10, which I think would just be the 4th time in program history that's happened, that would be pretty remarkable. And to have it done 2 of the last 3 years, you can say, hey, again, you can come win at Arizona. The biggest selling point to recruits is come here and we'll help you develop and get to the NFL. But they also want to win. That's also somewhere on the list of every recruit. And
Yeah.
knowing that they have a chance to do that at Arizona is going to be that's a big deal. And to be able to like put like on marketing material 2 double-digit win seasons in the last 3 years would be awesome. And it's not if they lose the game, it's not going to put a damper on everything by any means. But it would be nice to get to that magic number.
And two different coaches too, which
Right.
is wild to say that as well. The next one, number 4, with a successful recruiting class and a proven formula in the transfer portal, the Wildcats seem more than likely to reach the postseason nearly every year under Brent Brennan. It's a tricky one, but let's see what you do by
No,
yourself.
I'll actually buy this one.
Yeah.
Of course, keeping assistants is just as important, and some will come and go. Hopefully, none do this year, but eventually it will happen. We talked about.
Hmm.
But as long as Brent Brennan keeps making good decisions there, like he did this past year, and he has enough money to pay some top coaches, they should be in good shape. Look, ultimately, and this is something I've said at least a few times over the years. If Arizona can find some stability at head coach, and I think Brent Brennan potentially offers that better than any Arizona head coach since Dick Tomey retired because of his ties to the university, then I think we can get to a place where the minimal expectations every year are a bowl game. We haven't had that in a long time. I know it's difficult to retain a coach long term and for a coach to be successful long term to the point where you want to retain him. But I think Brent Brennan is the best chance we've had in a long time to get a situation like Utah has with Kyle Whittingham, a guy who's happy where he's at, knows he can win there, and isn't going to be lured away as long as Arizona can be competitive enough financially. And I think Arizona now has the right athletic director in place to help make that happen. So look, he's in year 2. Who knows what's going to happen going forward? But I think that if we're looking for another head coach who's going to have the kind of success and stability as a Dick Tomey, Brent Brennan is the best chance Arizona's had since Dick Tomey.
So and that's well said. I don't know what's going to happen with the bowl games. We don't know what's going to happen with the postseason.
Yeah.
But assuming that the structure stays relatively similar to the way it is today, I believe that Arizona in the Big 12 should win 6 games more often than not. I mean, you're going to see what you're going to see in college football is the non-conference schedules are going to get a lot weaker. You're going to play a lot of weaker teams to try to go to, at least 2-1, if not 3-0. And then you have to win, for Arizona, you got to probably go 4-5 in the conference, maybe, sometimes 3-6, and you make a bowl game. So I think Arizona at that point, depending on, quarterback situation, injuries and whatnot, more
Mhm.
years. If Brennan were to stay, you have a formula in place. Now, who knows how long Daggy and Danny Gonzalez are going to stay around,
Yeah.
but at least for another year, they should be here, I would think. And, the Wildcats, even with a trickier schedule, should be a bowl-bound team in Noah Fifita's senior year.
Yeah, and I think there are tiers in college football, and Indiana shows that you can sometimes move up in those. But you have your upper tier of teams that are usually in the mix, Alabama, Ohio State, a few other teams. Then you have that next tier of teams where you usually expect to see a ranking next to their name, somewhere in the
Yeah.
top 25, like Texas A&M, like Iowa, like where probably ASU should be more often than not. And then you have that next tier where you have teams who you expect to at least be competitive every year, and maybe they're in the top 25 every couple of years. I think that's where Arizona can reasonably be and expect to stay. And maybe they can move up to that second tier at some point if they have enough stability and financial backing, which is more important than ever. But I would be fine with Arizona getting back to that point because they just haven't had that kind of stability in a long time.
So, number five, Shane, and this is a generic question, not necessarily, well, it's not an Arizona question. Buy or sell, it is time to end the conference championship games and expand the college football playoff.
Buy part of that, sell part of it. I absolutely would not expand more than what they already are. In fact, if nothing else, and a lot of people have pointed this out, this year is a great example of how four teams would have been enough, at least this year, because I think we could all or almost all agree who the top four teams are this year. Although you could argue about the order, but I think we know what the top four teams are. And then there were the top four teams who were, seated that way in the college football playoff. There is no perfect solution to this, but as as far as the conference championship games go, yeah, it might be time to do away with them as long as you have so many teams in a given conference that it's almost impossible to compare apples to apples anymore. Like you have to resort to ridiculous tiebreakers that allowed a team like Duke to compete in the ACC championship game. These computer tiebreakers that left,
It's
leave you.
awful. I mean, the
Yeah.
ACC is their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
It,
Well, and
it
it's,
worked out for them, but still.
yeah. Well, and it's just like in so many conferences now, it's they may have like one common opponent. Like
Yeah.
Arizona and SMU have one common opponent, and that's that. There are some teams in the same conference that have the same thing. But if you're going to a fourth or fifth tiebreaker and in at least one conference each year to determine your conference championship game, I think something is terribly wrong. And the only way to fix that is to go back, something that's probably not going to happen, go back to smaller conferences and or bring back the divisional format because the combination of mega conferences combined with the removal of those divisions within those conferences has created a lot of the problems we're having now.
So this is going to be an unpopular take with you. I actually have been very anti postseason expansion until now. I would get rid of the conference championship games and I would go to a 2014 playoff. You want to make up the revenue? And let me tell you how.
Okay.
My opinion, there will be 10 conferences once you add the Pac-12 back next year. I would have 10 conference championship winners in, and I would have 14 at-large teams. And then you play seeds 9 through 24 in the first round, and then four more rounds from there. So you get rid of the conference championship games, you do that. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, I just think that's too much because I think the difference between college football and college basketball is I think in college basketball on any given day you're more likely to see an upset than in college football. Certainly you get those. But I think this year's going to be a good test because and we'll make our predictions later in the show, but like those top two or top four teams, in other words, like after the first couple of rounds, are we going to end up with those top four teams anyway? I think, and now that we have it so like the top four teams automatic, you're not just taking the top conference champions, you're taking the actual top four teams as the committee sees it. I'm interested to see because I think in most years of college football, unlike college basketball, there are only a handful of teams really who have a realistic chance of winning the national championship every year.
Yeah, that's fair. I get it, but if you're going to get rid of bowl games, which was what would happen here, and by the way, maybe I'm just biased because in a 2014 playoff this year, Shane, and in a 2014 playoff a couple years ago, Arizona's in.
Of course.
And it's not often that Arizona, I mean, if you think about it, if there was a 2014 playoff, Arizona's probably in the last since 2009. What is that? 17 seasons? Arizona's probably in it four times.
Yeah.
Oh nine, 14, and then 2 years ago, and now. And I may be missing another year in between there, but I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
But I mean, still, if you're it's an average of what? Once every 4 years that
Yeah.
Arizona would be in. And not saying that they would go anywhere, but it would be to say that Arizona has a chance to play for a national title.
Here,
You haven't ever had the opportunity to say that.
Here's a counter argument to that, though. You remember,
Okay.
me, and my nephew Zach got together at our place 2 years ago to watch the Alamo Bowl, and
Yeah.
how crazy we were going when Gunnar Maldonado had that touchdown return,
Yep.
and we were elated to see the win. That's a kind of a feel good way for a lot of teams who are not national championship contenders to end their season. Because if they had that, you had that format previously, the odds are very, very strong that Arizona's last game of the season would have been a loss. Instead, we know they're not going to win a national championship, but they finished it with a high ranking and 10 wins, and we felt great going into the offseason. So, and that's why I come back to the fact, or my belief, not the fact, but my belief, that there are only a handful of teams. Like I think this year, the top four teams and maybe Oregon, realistically, have a real shot to win the national championship. And Arizona, as good as they've been the last few weeks, I don't think 2014 playoff, I don't think they would have advanced that far.
No,
So at
but
least if you win the
understand,
Holiday Bowl, you have a chance to feel good about the end of your season again.
and I understand that, but yeah, I get it. But in the greater scheme of things, the Holiday Bowl's cool, and sure, I want to go. Sure, you want to go, and
Hmm.
hopefully we can both find a way to do that. But it doesn't mean a lot if you had Arizona at Ole Miss this weekend, or Arizona, let's see, 17, so they would have been playing, Arizona BYU, something like that. Like it would be like we would be jacked up for next
Yeah.
weekend. You know,
I get it. I think some things are kind of relative. Like in the NCAA tournament, there are some programs where it's your season is a success and everyone's thrilled if you just make it to the tournament. Some teams it's like you're thrilled if you get to the Sweet 16, and but there's tiers, is what I'm saying.
but see, let me bring up one other point here, and then we'll move along.
All right.
You look at FCS, they have a 32 team playoff. North Dakota State was undefeated in the regular season.
Yeah.
They were less than a 2-1 favorite to win it all. They were hosting what, Montana State at home, Montana at home, one of those schools that, wasn't expected. They were a giant favorite
Yeah.
and lost the game outright.
Yeah.
I mean, that team was the equivalent of Ohio State this year, and I mean Ohio State lost to Indiana, who's number two. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
I
Upsets
understand what you're
happen.
saying,
Upsets happen. They are an instance like that is very rare. A 16 beating to one, it has happened a couple times recently. It is very rare, and I think it's even rarer in college football. I understand your perspective, but I just see it a little differently.
All right, let me ask you one follow-up question.
Okay.
Did the committee get it right putting Miami in and Alabama in and leaving Notre Dame and BYU out?
Probably, although I mean, number one, the fact that BYU wasn't even talked about by ESPN is just kind of ridiculous. I mean, I could go
Agreed.
either way with that, but I think something that a lot of people have said that I completely agree with. We need to do away with these rankings before the actual thing because they're meaningless. There is no way to justify jumping Miami ahead of Notre Dame after you had Notre Dame ahead of Miami the week before when neither team played. That makes absolutely no sense. There you have a great case for Miami being ahead of Notre Dame, including the head-to-head win. So I'm not disputing that they didn't belong in. But what are you doing? To me, it looks like the committee really wanted an ACC team in the field. That's why they did it. That's what I think.
But see, this is where the ACC screwed Notre Dame. And no wonder Notre Dame's upset because their stupid tiebreakers put in Duke, which got James Madison to the field, who nobody wants to watch.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see, you could have had much better matchups. You would have had Miami or Virginia win that game. It should have been the highest ranked teams. It should be your highest ranked teams that are in there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, but again, and to kind of come full circle with this, I still feel like the teams that are on the cusp, like Alabama this year and Miami, I don't know if they're going to be factors in a couple of weeks. So I don't know if any of those teams are national championship contenders. I really think it's again. I'm trying my best to save my predictions for the end of the show, but I think for most of those teams, it's going to be. It was nice for them to get in, but they're not realistically going to win the whole thing.
We'll have that discussion after we chat with Matt Muehlebach. But first, let's get some Shane standouts. Very interesting. I assume you have some volleyball news for us here.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I'm really going to focus on. The big mention this week is Charita Stubbs and the volleyball team. they didn't just get to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 7 years, but they won a game when they got there. They won a match beating 7th seed South Dakota, and then they took 2-seed Stanford to 4 sets in the second round. They had a good year. That they lost to some very good teams. The Big 12 was actually very strong in volleyball, and there are a lot of matches where they took some very good teams, including ASU, to 4 or 5 sets. And so they did that with Stanford too on the road, because it's kind of the same kind of format as women's basketball. You have, or I guess in any number of sports, we have a 4-team pod and 1-team hosts. So they bowed out in the second round, but they got there. They won a game. They gave Stanford a tough time, so they're headed in the right direction. So congrats to Coach Stubbs and the volleyball team on a great season. Hopefully, we'll have her on the show again before next season starts.
All right. As always, wanted to remind you that Wildcat Country is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino. It's the holidays. You might want to head over. You want to make a little extra money to buy some holiday gifts. All right, or just want to go have some fun. Take a day and head out to Maricopa. Did you know that Harrah's Auction Casino is your key to nationwide fun? Unlock perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast at your local home. 4 Caesars Rewards, free dining in Atlantic City, Vegas, or New Orleans. Yes. Free slot play in Maricopa, absolutely. Free hotel stays from coast to coast. Oh yeah, get rewarded for all the ways you play at the official sponsor play, Harrah's Auction Casino. Caesars Rewards is the #1 player's card, and Harrah's Auction is the only local casino that has it. Coming up next, Matt Muehlebach, Mr. Triple Double, here on Wildcat Country.
All right, Wildcat fans, let's talk about crushing your workouts with the Iceshaker 40-ounce Legend Series shaker bottle. It's made from kitchen-grade stainless steel, leak-proof, tough as nails, built-in straw, soft touch handle, and yeah, it keeps your drinks cold for a long time. I got mine in both Wildcat Red and Blue. Be sure to get yours at iceshaker.com.
Always glad to welcome back one of our great friends of the show, one of my favorite guests to have on the show, the great Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach, joins us here on Wildcat Country. All right, Matt, we had you on before the season. You were very optimistic on Arizona basketball. However, none of us could have expected that early December, Arizona's undefeated and #1. Why are the Wildcats better than we all anticipated?
Well, yeah, good to join you guys, #1, and #2. I think they played well. I mean, that's one of the things you never know how a team's gonna play. I knew they had talent. I knew that the young guys were good. I knew they were talented. I didn't know how they would play, but I think the two things, they've just all played well and they've meshed as a team. I think the thing that I maybe didn't know as well until you really see them in person is I truly believe this is the strongest, biggest team, like as a whole, that Arizona has ever had. I've said that now like a number of times, probably being redundant, but they're just physically the most imposing team that I've ever seen, like every player. And, and I'll start with a guy nobody even talks about is Braden Burries. Walk by him in person. He's like almost 6'4". He's got to be 200 plus. Like he's a big guy. And Aristote, Jaden Bradley. I'm not even talking about the bigs yet. I'm just talking about, Delhi's put on, what have they said, 20 pounds or whatever it is. And then you get to the really big guys and that front line of Krivas, who I think is the tallest and biggest player, tallest player in U of A history, with Koa Pete and with Awaka. It's just a massively big, strong, physical team that is imposing their will on everyone.
Yeah, like Stephen Pearl said after the game, something about it's like playing football players out there, about just how big and physical they are. Sort of two-part question, Matt. Arizona's ranked #1 in the AP poll this week, edged out by Michigan in the coaches poll. Some other teams certainly could lay claim to being the best team in the country. #1, and I know you don't watch, you got a day job, so you don't watch college hoops 24/7, but just in your best estimate, #1, is Arizona the best team in the country? And #2, are they deserving of the #1 ranking?
I think they are because of their schedule. And you've got to look at who they've beaten, how they've beaten them. Now, I will say Michigan's wins and their, how bad they have beaten teams is unbelievably impressive. Like it's hard to, I had to look at their scores and I don't like using that word unbelievable because we say that all the time and all this stuff is believable. But
Yeah.
I looked at the score and I had to check it like 2 or 3 times. Like, was that really the score?
Yeah.
And they're really good. And I would probably put Arizona slightly ahead of them because I do think it's been a better schedule. They haven't had the victories, the sort of, huge lopsided victories like Arizona has had, other than Auburn was pretty lopsided for me. But I think I talked to actually a friend of mine that is at the Big Ten, and he does the stats for them. And I was saying, on Friday I said this. I said I would have. This was before Purdue got blown out, and I would have said Arizona, Michigan, Purdue. That was my 1, 2, 3. I have not seen the Purdue game, so I want to see it. I want to look at it. And I'm in shock
You don't need to
that's
watch it.
what happened.
It's real
Yeah,
bad. It was real
it's just
bad.
really that surprised. But that would have been my 1, 2, 3. But hey, look at the scores all weekend. The Big 12 showed out. I mean, the
Yeah.
Big 12 looked very, very good. And when you look around the conference, and we know it's been the best conference for the last what, 5, 6, 7 years. And it looks like it's right there again. I think the Big Ten's right there. It's fun. I mean, and especially early these days, you don't know who is good, and it still takes a little bit of time to sift through all that.
As far as individual players, Matt, because you talked about maybe Krivas sort of being the wild card, but when we talked to you before the season started, and if he can play close to his ceiling as we believe it is, then Arizona could be this good. And I think he got off kind of a slow start, but he's been one of their better players in the last several games. Has he been the biggest pleasant surprise on this team, or do you think there's another Arizona player that deserves that label?
Yeah, I think pleasant surprise. I would agree with that. I would agree that I think he was the question mark. He hadn't played, for a while. He's a big man. He was hurt. His minutes had been, somewhat meaningful when he played, but not, enough of a tape to really know for sure. And he's just gotten better, it seems, every game. I think not surprised, but I think Delhi has been a little bit of a surprise. I mean, I shouldn't say surprise. He's been really good, and he's been good all the way around. He's been clutch. Him and Jaden Bradley won the UCLA game. Those two. If they don't play well, they don't have a chance. They don't win that game. And so he's been really good, in my opinion. And again, this is not a surprise at all. Jaden Bradley's been an absolute rock. I think we talked about it on your show, the laughable position of not ranking him in the top 20 by some
Yeah.
of those media things was
I'm
just
thankful for
laughable,
that at the moment.
right? I
If
know.
that's fueled him, then so be it.
No question about it. And I think everybody else, you sort of penciled in they were going to do some of the things they've done. I think Koa Pete, um, it's probably in a way, I probably should, I should probably shout it out. I mean, I was surprised by the first game.
Yeah.
Let me,
Yeah.
I haven't been surprised by the others because I knew he could do that, but the first game, that put everybody on notice.
Matt, one thing about this team that has impressed me is the development of Mo Krivas from what we saw against Florida to where he is now. It feels
Yeah.
like he's almost a different player in a month, and that has just, you've seen improvement. I mean, he's a force. And you said what? He's the tallest player that Arizona's ever had. Didn't you say something? Yeah. I mean, what's your
Yeah.
take on how much he's improved from Florida to Auburn?
Well, a few things, credit him. I mean, he's put in the work. He's the guy that's figured it out since the injury and come back and got himself in shape. That's the number one thing for a big guy. Are you in shape? And how can you play minutes? And I don't remember the exact number, but he played a ton of minutes in that scrimmage against St. Mary's, and more than I thought. And that was number one. But Tommy Lloyd, you gotta kind of start in a good way, right? Calling him out as kind of the big man whisperer,
Yeah.
because what he does and how he develops big men is significant and impactful. And he's done it ever since. If you go back and look at all the names at Gonzaga, And I asked Tommy one time, do you have a special thing with bigs? Like, what is it? It seems like you have starting to put this list together. You think of Umar Ballo and what he did with him. If anybody saw Ballo his first year, he wasn't even close to what he ended up being. Um, and just, but he said, look, number one, that was what I had to do as a coach at Gonzaga to make our program better. He says, we weren't Arizona in the year 2000. We were far from it. We had to develop players. We had to bring guys in and make them better. So we got really good at learning and working really hard about development. And they brought in McDonald's All-Americans these days, but they weren't back in those days.
Right.
And he said, which I agree. I roomed with two bigs when I got to Arizona, Mark Georgeson and Sean Rooks.
Yeah.
Bigs are different, like they're trying to do this stuff in these 7-foot bodies, and it's awkward sometimes and it's hard, and there's just a lot that goes into it. So you actually have a little more to work with, right? Because they develop late a lot. And because of that, if you can really get their trust, you have it's kind of a blank, not blank, but it's almost a blank canvas. Whereas guards kind of get to U of A, they're pretty good. If they're good enough to get to U of A, they know how to play. Now you can obviously work with them, but the bigs have a lot more potential to work with.
So Arizona's playing 8 guys consistently, and I feel like this is the strongest 8 that we've had at Arizona in a long time. Where your guys off the bench, Awaka, obviously former starter, ADO, former starter, Aristode, impact player off the. I feel like this is the most playable 8 players that Arizona's had in a long time. Can you think of a recent Arizona team that was this? I don't want to call it deep because I'm trying to avoid that word, but this deep
Yeah.
and this successful with their bench.
Yeah, I think just as a team in whole, you'd almost have to go back to like 2015 and 14.
Yeah.
Those two Sean Miller teams that were, to me, a shot away, the first one, that 14 team from being to win it all.
Yeah.
And Aaron Gordon, they probably weren't as good offensively as this team, but that team was pretty physically impressive. Gordon was a freshman. He became something that, he was still amazing as a freshman, but he obviously became an incredible all-star after that in the NBA. Of course, you go back to 05, you start talking about some of the great teams of all time, 05, 03. This team, at least this early. Now, the biggest challenge they're going to have, because I'm putting that team already in that category, is, and this is something some teams, it's not easy, is how do they deal with success and how do they deal with that number one moniker? They haven't lost. They go to Alabama, this weekend. I think it's going to be interesting just to see that happen. And they're not going to go undefeated, obviously, in the Big 12.
No.
And how do they deal with kind of the success that they have? And look, I was on a team. I think I was on maybe the first team in 87, 88 to be number one. And I want to say that was literally, what is today's date? The 8th. I think that was like December 5th or something like that. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, some of the symmetry. That was Lute Olson's 5th year at U of A. This is Tommy Lloyd's 5th year at Arizona. They got ranked number one about the exact same time. There, so some cool things there.
Well, so piggybacking on that, Matt, how did you guys handle it when you were number one? Like, did Lute tell you guys not to start, reading your back when they actually had news clippings, like don't read your news, don't read all the headlines. How did you guys navigate that?
That is a really good question. I don't remember Lute ever saying that. You guys remember Lute? I mean, Lute was nothing if not just prepared and routine, and he wasn't a guy. Look, Lute was not a guy to get too excited about that kind of stuff, right? He was so locked in that. I felt too like, and I think Tommy's like this too, like in a good kind of confident, maybe even overconfident, like just a good confident way, like embraced it. Lute had no problem being number one. Like he was proud to like stick his chest out and go to a press conference and say we're the number one team. Like, he didn't back away from it. And I think sometimes you've seen teams where that happens and the people almost go the other way, compensate the other way, like, oh, we can't, and Tommy's a confident guy. If you're
Yeah.
around him, he's a very confident person. But he's also humble too, like Lute was. And I hate to like compare him so much, but there's a ton of comparisons and good ones. So, I think what we did too with the team that we had, you guys remember that team? I mean, it just had so many very confident, some older players that had no problem with it. It didn't phase the group and the personality of that team. That team was really good with it.
Straddling that confidence, arrogance line, I think Tommy Lloyd's pretty good at. Maybe Lute was as
That
well.
that's a good
Yeah.
way of saying that in
Yeah.
about 5 words. I said it in
Yeah.
like 52 words, but
Well, that's what we bring you on for.
that's right.
Two more questions for you, Matt. One of my favorite things about this team is that they're pretty good at shooting the three, but they don't have to. They don't have to hit a lot of threes to win. And I'm talking to a guy who specializes in 3-point shooting, but they've had some games like where they've made just 2 or 3 3-pointers. Of course, they've maybe have attempted like 7 or 8 of them. And I like that, but is that something that they can get away with in March, like going like 3 for 10 or 4 for 10 from 3-point range and still find a way to beat some of the best teams in the country in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. I think so because Tommy Lloyd's offense just knows how to get points. They're efficient and they figure out ways. They figure out really good ways to score and when to score, how to do it. I mean, they do it also through transition so much. I have no problem with not shooting a three, if it's in transition, of course. But I think what we're going to see though is they're going to have to make threes because teams are going to be a little bit more like I was at the UCLA game. Mick Cronin packed the paint that game. I'd have to go back and look how many threes they took that game, but they took probably more than they had taken in the previous 2 games, or 3 games, whatever. I don't know if that was the third or fourth game, but they're going to have to take some because teams are just going to give it to them. They're going to pick their poison, and that's going to be one of them. But they're just so efficient. And the other thing the reason I do think it works is you have a few players that their specialty are mid-range jump shots.
Mhm.
So Koa Pete has shown his shot is a mid-range shot. Jaden Bradley, his shot is a mid-range shot. And so, and then you've got the other bigs that don't shoot the threes, Owaka and Krivas. But so it's just that's their game. So I think it fits okay. But it is a question, Shane. I mean, if you get behind, can because sometimes teams need to make some threes to catch up. But they just haven't been behind.
Right. Right. Well, and they have a little bit, but yeah, they haven't depended on the three to this point. Last question for you, Matt. Always appreciate your time and insight. And like you're one of the guys we talk to who we wish we could just, sit around to share it. Picking your brain and having you share memories for hours, but we'll be respectful of your time. We won't do that tonight. The Alabama game, it's NATO's teams they're always very fast. I think Alabama's number 3 in the country or in KenPom in tempo. They've had some injuries, but they're getting healthy. It looks like they may be healthy, as healthy as they've been in a while when they play Arizona. Has Arizona played well enough to this point where it's fair to expect them to go essentially on the road and beat a team as good as Alabama?
Yeah, I mean they're the number 1 team in the country, right? I think it's fair to have an expectation they could win that game. I also think if they don't, right, we all would say, yeah, that was understandable too.
Most fans would.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Hey, I come from Chiefs Kingdom right now, where the fans are like asking to fire Andy Reid after he's been to 5 Super Bowls in 7 years. So, yeah, you're right. Some fans are unrealistic, but I think it is. I mean, I think they're good enough. I think one thing I'll say that one thing I thought about this Alabama game. this Alabama is truly the fastest team they might play all season.
Yeah.
And, in terms of, like you said, in terms of tempo, getting up and shooting threes and, getting up and down. And, Florida was pretty fast for sure. But they weren't like a top 10 tempo. UCLA's, obviously on the lower end of that.
Yeah.
I thought Auburn would play faster. I think just Arizona outplayed them so much. They didn't get into the tempo that they like to play at. And UConn actually, with their team and their makeup right now, actually plays pretty slow tempo wise. And so I think this is going to be interesting to me because we've always said, with teams like how can they play different styles? And I think that's always been a key with a really good team. Can you play a slow or a fast team? And the question we've mostly asked is, could Arizona play slow? Because over the last 35 years, the only teams Arizona's ever struggled with was a slow team, never a fast team. They've always had the horses to play with almost NBA teams at times, or that pace. So this will be interesting. I think fun for Arizona to play on the road with such an incredibly fast tempo team will be a blast to watch.
So you know how I like to always ask you a random question. I'm going to go easy on you with this one. I know you're a big fan of all Arizona sports, the football team. Just your thoughts on
Yeah.
team ends, 4-3 going into November, and they end 5-0. They're 9-3. You talk about a team that didn't have the expectations and has gone above and beyond. Just kind of your thoughts on what Brent Brennan and his staff have done.
It truly is kind of shocking. Like you said, at 4-3, I didn't even come
Yep.
close to expect it. I mean, I don't know if anyone did.
Yep.
Did I tell you guys the story that I knew Brent when he was like 8 years old?
Really?
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
so
No.
so his dad was best friends with my uncle. And when I lived in Northern California, and they lived, in Northern California, just south of San Francisco. I lived in the East Bay. So we would get together for like family barbecues and,
Hmm.
4th of July. And so I've known that family for a long time. I've known his brother, Brad, interned for me one summer
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
we've had
here.
Brad on the show several times.
A couple weeks ago.
He's
Yeah.
Yeah.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just love that family. And I have to say, like, what was more, I mean, what was surprising to me was how much they struggled last year. Because I know how good of a coach he is, and I know how good of a guy he is, and I just know how he was able to win at San Jose State. I know that program and how tough that is, and it
Yeah.
just something wasn't adding up for me, and so just unbelievable props to him and kudos to him for what he's done to this team. And I think we saw it with some of the attendance stuff, right?
Mm.
I think part of why it wasn't sold out. I mean, one game we had, it was 100 degrees in November. The next game, it was raining. We had a game earlier this year that had lightning. We had some weird weather issues with our
Yep.
games
Yes, we
this
did.
year in Arizona.
Mhm.
But I think people, even at games where they were whatever they were, 7-3, they in their mind probably didn't register that they could even be 7-3 after last year. It was a tough year. And so I didn't expect it. I'm thrilled for what they did. And for him and the work they put in and the coaching, he went out and got some coaches. That
Yeah.
was probably the toughest thing for him, to make some coaching changes. And that's what you have to do when you're the boss.
What do you remember about Brent Brennan as a kid?
I mean, I don't, I mean, we were all just kids,
Right.
pushing each other in the pool and goofing around. We all love sports. That's what I remember. We were always watching. My uncle loved it. All we did when we got together was play basketball, play baseball, play something. It was nonstop playing something in the backyard, or watching it on TV once we got the barbecue and the dinner ready. So, that's what I remember, is just a fun group of kids just goofing around. My sisters were, girls were playing soccer, we were playing we were playing something, and that's what I remember, is just playing any sport possible.
Was it back in the 80s when you had those metal slides with no guardrails and just kind of parents threw caution to the wind and
Oh, we were we
the
had.
Stranger Things era?
Oh yeah, it was. We did. I mean, and I think at times we probably like went to a neighbor's like 4 blocks away, and nobody even knew we were gone.
Yeah.
It was.
That is awesome. That's the kind of stuff I love finding out
Yeah.
here on the show. last question for you. And as Shane said, we always appreciate, we always appreciate having you on very much. Where are we going to see you on TV next? What are you calling? What do we need to know? What game do I need to bet on that you'll be a part of?
That's right. Well,
Eric's looking for some insider info.
No. I just want to know which game I need to watch so that I can bet on. Yeah, I like the action.
I'm going to see. I just did this couple days ago. I did Saturday at UCLA Oregon, which was real. I just want to say that was so cool for me because first of all, I'm doing some games for Peacock now, NBC Peacock, and that was on the Peacock channel. So I really love that network. I'm having a good time with those guys. They're really great people, and they're starting to expand, their entire streaming and all the stuff that they're doing. They're really getting in. They obviously had NBC as the NBA. So that's been a really cool thing for me this year. I've got some more Peacock games coming up. I've got Arizona on at the beginning of the new year at Utah. So that's going to be
nice.
Super cool. I got the Arizona game this weekend. So back to that, what was cool for me was it was a Big Ten game, but I'm like, how is this a Big Ten game? It's Oregon at UCLA.
Yeah.
They've played some of the best Pac-12 basketball in the last 15 years, those two teams. So they've had like an Arizona-Oregon rivalry, just some great games. But I'm going to see my boy this weekend, Wayne Tinkle. I got an Oregon State game, Montana State. So those guys bring me back. I love working with some of my old guys in the Pac-12, era guys. And so I got those guys coming up. And then I'm really excited. I got a couple games with Arizona here at the end of the month. So they're coming up. I think I've got the game on the 16th and on the 22nd in Tucson. And the game on the 22nd, you guys will have to maybe have me on after that game because I'm doing the play-by-play that game.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it should be really exciting. I actually did the play-by-play with Reggie Geary.
Yeah, for one of the exhibition games, wasn't it?
For the exhibition game, but
yeah.
I guess I did a decent enough job. They're having me back to do a regular or non-con game. And
Very
so
nice.
I'm doing it with Corey Williams.
Awesome.
And Corey Williams and I actually work together now at Crest Insurance. And so we got two Crest guys calling an Arizona game. That's going to be pretty fun.
Well, congratulations on that. You're doing my dream job. That's what I always wanted to do, was be a play-by-play guy. However, I found for me that calling basketball, I called one basketball game. It was an exhibition game when I was in school, and I stunk at it.
Yeah.
Football and baseball, which were slower sports, fine. But when it came
But baseball, there's a ton of filler though.
I can talk. That's no problem.
You can.
Football calling it short spurts. But it is underrated hard to be a basketball play-by-play guy.
Well, I was just going to say to you, like, I was sitting there, right, and I had all my notes, and, you're like this, you got notes everywhere, and all of a sudden the game's going like this. And I know it, right? I've done the analyst job for 15 years, but I'm trying to figure out, that was number 5, what's his name again for NAU? And to your point, it was way harder than I thought. Yeah. And I know how hard it is.
I remember doing it up in the Arizona Stadium press box, in college, and that was so much fun. And I never pursued it, because I'm like, am I probably not that good enough? But I can't wait to listen to you. I didn't hear you in the exhibition game. I'm sure you'll kill it. We will have you back on. We always love having you on. Thanks again.
Feel free to critique me. You can critique me just as hard as because hey, you're out in the public on those things. You gotta take it when it comes.
No, I mean, listen, you'll do a great job. I'm really looking forward to hearing it. Good luck, and thanks as always
guys.
for hanging out with Shane and me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Always fun to chat with our buddy Matt Muehlebach. It's just like three guys sitting in a bar just shooting the breeze. I love that. I love having Muehlebach on. He's great, and we're excited to hear him do his play-by-play in a couple weeks. Shane, the CFP, we alluded to it we talked about it in the first segment.
Yep.
Let's make our final 4 picks. We won't pick every game. We'll start next week. These are unofficial. You can change them as we go along. Give me your final four, and then we'll pick the championship game after that. Who is going to advance to the semifinals?
Yeah, I kind of gave it away, I think, in the first segment, but my final four are the top four. It's pretty boring. Kind of the opposite of last year because I think the 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds all won in the next round because of the way things were scheduled. But yeah, I've got Indiana number one, respect to Indiana. Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech advancing. And then at this moment, always subject to change, I have Ohio State over Texas Tech in the national championship game. I think that well, we'll talk more about Tech and Indiana if it gets there. But as of now, I've got Ohio State winning it all over Texas Tech. Although I would love to see an Ohio State Indiana rematch.
So I would not, and I don't think we will. I like Ohio State and Georgia to meet in the Fiesta Bowl. I like Texas Tech to beat Oregon, and we talked about it earlier. I have a weird feeling that Alabama goes the team that didn't belong in. You could argue. They go on the road. They beat Oklahoma. Doesn't have much of an offense. Kind of a payback game from what we saw in mid-November. The payback angle worked pretty well this past weekend. Not undefeated, but better than 50-50. And I think I could see them beating Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And Alabama has the play. We know they have the athletes.
Yeah.
And it's just like Ohio State and Oregon. You had an Ohio State team that lost their last game. You weren't sure what to make of last year, and then they go in and they smoke Tennessee, and then they smoked Oregon and went on a run. Now I don't think Alabama's going to get that far. I think Texas Tech beats Alabama in the Peach Bowl. I think Ohio State beats Georgia in a close, low-scoring game. And I think Ohio State beats Texas Tech, so we agree on that as of now in the national championship game. So be cool to see Ohio State and Texas Tech in Miami.
Yeah, and Alabama did have quite a few injuries going into the Georgia game, which no excuse. Georgia, beat them easily.
Manhandled them, yeah.
But Jam Miller and some of their other top guys were out. So if they get healthier in time, then you could be onto something. You could be.
All right, so let's make a pick. Speaking of Alabama, Arizona is at Alabama this weekend, Saturday night, 7:30. Of course, I'm going to be at some function and won't be able to watch the game except on my phone, which is foolish on my part. But number 1 Arizona, number 12 Alabama. I think Alabama will be favored in this game, and I think Alabama will win this game. I think they will get free throws at the end. I think it will be a very close game until the end, and they pull away with free throws. Arizona is a really good team. I think they will end up being a 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, but this will be their one non-conference blemish. Give me Alabama reluctantly by 7 on Saturday night.
Interesting. Well, first of all, I actually think Arizona might be favored in this game by a point or two.
Interesting. Okay.
But so we'll have to see about that. Alabama's schedule has been every bit as difficult as Arizona's has. They've lost 2 games, both to very good teams, Purdue and Gonzaga. They have wins over Illinois and St. John's. They're number 3 in Ken Palm offense, number 47 in defense, which is a bit similar to Auburn, except Alabama's a bit better in both categories. Alabama's had some injuries to top players lately. Aiden Holloway is probably the biggest one to keep an eye on. He's averaging 18 points per game, shooting 43% from 3. He missed Alabama's game versus UTSA, but Nate Oates called him a game-time decision for that game, which suggests he could be back for Arizona. Even with the injuries, Bama's won 4 in a row. The competition in those games hasn't been as stellar as the previous 4, but they've won them all easily. I do think Arizona matches up well with them in terms of size. I think Krivas, Pete, Karchenkov. By the way, we haven't mentioned Ivan Karchenkov, who had a fantastic game against Auburn.
Yeah,
fantastic. I think they can have similar success against Alabama. I feel like I curse Arizona every time I pick them, but the fact that you picked against them makes me feel a little bit better. I'm gonna be brave enough to pick Arizona in this game, even though this will essentially be a road game. I'm gonna take the Wildcats by 3 points over Alabama.
Well, you know what, Shane? I actually like your pick better because, well, obviously because we want Arizona to win, but you also had them winning at UConn. Yeah. So that was something. So that was a hell of a pick by you. And,
I got the UCLA game wrong before that, but at least I got the UConn game right.
We shall see. I'm ahead of you in basketball, but you're kicking my butt in football. We're gonna have to schedule a lot of bowl game picks over the next few weeks to make up for that.
You got to do.
I don't think it's going to work out. You've just consistently dominated me this year. Good for you. Well done.
The less thinking about it, the better. I just kind of I don't throw darts at a dartboard, but I go with my gut quickly, and that as long as that keeps working, that's what I'm going to do.
Tip of the cap. I always want to thank Matt, or our buddy Matt Muehlebach, for joining us here on the show. He is one of our favorite guests, so great to catch up with him, and we wish him well on his his broadcasting endeavors in the coming weeks. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Hey, let's just enjoy it. It's a lot of fun right now. Thanks for listening to Wildcat Country, and as always, bear down.